this argument has two premises, and then what?
And then an
Intermediate conclusion,
and then main.
and then the main conclusion, right? And even if you couldn't speak English, you would know that from the words therefore and so. I'm not saying that in any sort of derogatory way, just saying that if that's the only two words you knew in this language, you could come in here and say, this is an intermediate conclusion.
But you'd say it in another
You'd say it in another language and you'd leave, but you could get this aspect of the test right. How do we know that's an intermediate conclusion merely from those two words?
Therefore test.
Not from the therefore test.
Oh.
Oh.
So it just means that the thing directly before it is the premise.
Yes, and it means what's coming after is a conclusion, and therefore does the exact same thing. Says, hey, that was just a premise, and now you have a conclusion. So if you have two words that are telling you that the same thing is a premise and a conclusion at the same time, it has to be an intermediate conclusion. Okay, cool. All right. So thankfully that's not our situation, at least for most of us. So let's take a look at what the assumption is. Did anyone spot the assumption? What's the assumption, Wendy?
The assumption is that new oil fields are being discovered,
Yes.
and that the old oil fields are drained.
are
Drained.
being drained. Yeah, so the key word here is, does anyone know? It's probably one that I should add to the conditional statements packet, but it's rare, so I don't know. It's as. As is conditional, right? It says, but oil reserves gradually drop as old oil fields are drained, but are they? We don't know if they are. So it's kind of like if. It's like if old oil fields are drained, then the reserves will drop. And if new fields are discovered, then the things will go up. If they had written if, right, this would be a lot easier. Like, the oil reserves gradually drop if the things are drained. And then they never say it. You're like, wait, would they be? So, anyways, as means if. Therefore, so then we make an assumption that goes from there to the intermediate conclusion. I don't think there's a jump from the intermediate conclusion to the main conclusion. Of course, the main conclusion is not supported because the intermediate conclusion is not supported, but I don't think there's a jump there. What do we want to talk about here? So, what is the complete subject of the main conclusion?
Most through unchanged.
Yes, most through unchanged. The predicate starts at the word are, right? Now the reason I pointed that out is because this conclusion is only about most of the nations stating that their oil reserves were unchanged. It's not even about all of them, it's just about most of those, right? So it's a very narrow group. That's why what? A is wrong. A is talking about any nation with oil reserves. Okay, we don't care about those people, or nations. So that's wrong. Answer choice, are we going to use strong language or weak language? Weak language, necessary assumptions, does have to be assumed, right? Okay, what word makes B good? Or words, yeah, there's several here. Bijan?
Likely.
Likely, soft.
Most.
Most of the nations stated in their oil reserves were in most of the nations that stated that their oil reserves were unchanged. It's talking about the group we just identified in the main conclusion, right? So it's very narrow. It's limited to that group. What else?
Or both.
Yeah.
Or both. It's one or the other or both. Like, this is actually really good because we don't need it to be true that both of them happened. We only need it to be true that one of them happened. Because if one of those things happened, then these people would be wrong, right?
So what would negating that look like?
A mess.
I often find the negation test hard on these because sometimes it's like I feel like I'm gonna negate the wrong thing.
Yeah. So you don't have to do it every time. There's really two questions. One is, does this have to be true?
Yeah.
Or, I'm not totally sure. Let me negate it and see if that hurts the argument. Because if it is something that has to be true, then negating it should destroy it. It's really like an option. Sometimes one works better than the other. In this case, it would be, it is not likely that these nations either had oil fields drained or new oil fields discovered. And if that's not likely, then basically nothing happened. That's not good for this conclusion. Okay. Answer choice C. What words make this wrong?
But also?
Yes. It's not true. It doesn't have to be true that there was at least one nation that had both of these things happening. So, but also makes it so that it's and both, right? And the other thing. It only has to be true that at least one nation had one of these things happen. Presumably a lot more did, but... okay, good. How about answer choice D?
Any nation.
Uh,
It's like almost any nation.
Oh, okay. If a nation... Well, I would go a little bit further.
Everything after 1997.
I
did both.
I actually stopped at I stopped at 1996 because this is talking about the conclusion. If a nation incorrectly stated, and that's what we're trying to prove, whether or not they incorrectly stated it or not. Does that make sense? We're going from the premises to the conclusion. This is kind of like going from the conclusion. How do you feel about that? Not good? Okay, let's talk about it a little bit more. So if a nation incorrectly stated at the end of the 1997 that its oil reserves have not changed, then during 1997 that nation drained its oil fields and discovered new ones. Another way of thinking about this is that, yes, it does not have to be true that both of these things happened, right? Only has to be true that one of these things happened. And this doesn't have to be true for every nation that incorrectly stated it. Yeah, but I think the bigger problem here, well, the easiest way to look at this is just and. It doesn't have to be true that both of these things happen. Okay, let's take a look at 19. How do you translate unless?
If not.
Wow, the chorus. So what is the if-then translation of this? It's saying one should not intentionally misrepresent unless you're trying to help them, right? Basically. So I would negate that and say if you're not trying to help them, in other words, if it's not in their interest, then, or the purpose was not in their interest, then don't misrepresent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So why does answer choice A straight up violate this? I don't know if I would. Let's see. Is this okay? It depends on what you're thinking of when you say false contrapositive.
She didn't act in his best interest.
She did not act in his best interest. So we're talking about this situation, right? Yeah. And then what she did is misrepresent. So yes, this is not a contrapositive of this, but it's not a typical false contrapositive where you flip, or only negate, right? It's actually a situation where you're talking about the right situation. You're talking about the right sufficient condition, but the opposite result occurred. Okay. Now, answer choice B, it said that he did. There's two problems with this. What are the two problems? What do you think, Kat? Wait, what? Answer choice B. Are you with us at this time?
Oh, I'm with us. I ended up picking B.
Did you pick B? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, this is a great discussion then.
Because she doesn't believe in that principle, but he's doing it for her best interest. Like it abides by the principle that's.
Okay, so he did it. It's in her interest, right? So it's talking about a situation that we don't care about. We don't talk about when it's not in her interest. But there is another problem here. What's the other problem?
It doesn't violate, but you're looking for it to violate.
You know what?
It just conforms.
It follows the rules.
It follows the rule.
Yeah, the other problem I was thinking here, which is totally wrong. For some reason I thought that he was saying what she believed, but that's not true. He's saying the opposite. So I thought for a second that he wasn't misrepresenting. Stupid. Sorry, my mistake. So this just
If not misrepresent, then
alrighty. we don't care about these situations when it's in her interest. We only care about when it's not in her interest. Okay. All right. Let's go to.
Don't you want?
Wait, so it's a contrapositive, right? B is a contrapositive. So he misrepresents her, like if M then I.
No, it's not. It's not a contrapositive.
It's not.
It's saying that it's in her interest. Therefore, well, what does it say exactly?
Doesn't B follow the interest,
believes-
but you're looking for it to violate it?
He did so solely to keep the other person from bothering her.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I'm thinking about this is they're saying under these circumstances, when it's not in their interest, then you can't do this, right? And I'm thinking here, this is in her interest. So, or at least the purpose was in her interest. So it's not a situation that we're concerned about. So this is a false contrapositive of that. But false contrapositives are not something that contradict the other if-then statement, right? This is something that could be true, even if this is true. It's just something that doesn't have to be true. Does that make sense? And we're looking for something that cannot be
So
true.
that's why it doesn't violate.
That's why it doesn't violate, because it could be true, and we're looking for something that absolutely cannot be true. A false contrapositive is something that could be true, but not something that must be true. Okay, Anthony.
Wait, the answer was A, right?
Yes.
So in the actual like question,
Mm-hmm.
it says in doing so is to act in the interest of that other person.
Yeah.
So for A,
Mm-hmm.
it's for her that she's acting in her own interest.
She did so merely make him look ridiculous. Well, I don't know what interest it is, but it's not in the interest of the other person. That's all we care about. As long as it's not in their interest.
In whose in Bruce's interest?
The other person, because it says unless one's purpose in doing so is to act in the interest of that person. That person is referring to the other person.
So who is that other person in this? Is it Bruce?
Yes, it's Bruce.
Um,
So Anne is not doing something that's in Bruce's interest.
yeah, she's not.
Yep.
Wait, so you said I to M, is that correct or not?
This is answer choice B.
Oh, that's B.
Answer choice A, Bruce is doing something that's not in her interest.
Oh, hold on. I guess I got the original if-then statement wrong. So I put it as if I then M. That's wrong, right?
That is wrong.
Because I need because it's like unless one person is doing so is so if they are acting in the interest.
Yeah, that's
then
wrong.
If they misrepresent, that's wrong.
You need to negate your if clause. So if you're gonna make in the interest the if clause, then you need to negate it. So if it's not in their interest, then you shouldn't misrepresent.
You negate that one and then you
Leave the
keep
other
that
one.
alone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool? Yes.
Sorry, not to drag this out too much, but for B, you said it's if I then M, right?
Yeah, if it was in his interest, right? Or Thelma's interest. And so it's a situation we don't care about.
Isn't it if M then I?
What? No.
And in
Why?
saying-
Are these even conditional? I'm looking at these and these don't even, like, the answer choices don't even seem to be conditional statements. They just seem like they're just like giving us,
They're just giving you two
Two situations.
situations. They don't even have a conclusion. So, but
Yeah.
the thing is that since we are thinking about this is conditional, and this is saying in these situations you need to do this. I'm just saying it's easiest to think of it as we're under this situation. We're under a situation in which it's I,
Okay.
and there's nothing we can conclude about
see.
I
I see,
because
I see.
I is not going to go forward and it's not going to go backward.
Okay.
And you can actually do the same thing with M. Actually, you can't do it. If it's M, then it's I, but that would conform with this situation. So,
So when you go into this, do you think to yourself, I'm looking for not I, M?
I'm looking for, yes, a situation where we are not doing something in our interest, and then
Would you look for
violating.
M, not I? Because wouldn't that be?
Because okay, so contrapositive is mi, right?
And it's a
So
motion.
in a situation where they're misrepresenting them, right? And it's not in their interest. That's exactly what we do. The exact same thing. That's exactly what we found. Yeah.
Wait,
So
is
it really, so what you put here really depends on what you drew. That's the easiest way to think about it, because it doesn't matter. Sometimes it does matter, because sometimes you're given arguments and you have this, therefore that. So there is a direction, but here there's no direction. So whatever you ended up drawing, I feel like this is the more intuitive. This is sort of say if you're misrepresenting, then it better be in their interest. I guess you could say that. I think it's more natural to think, well, if you're not in their interest, then you shouldn't misrepresent. But it doesn't matter. Both are the exact same thing. Sean?
Yeah.
You cool with that? Okay. All right.